Before the first European ships appeared on the horizon, the land that would become the United States was already ancient. From the towering cliffs of the southwest to the dense forests of the northeast, countless tribes and nations thrived: the Cherokee, Sioux, Iroquois, Navajo, and many more. They hunted, traded, built cities, and passed down wisdom through stories and generations. The land was alive with spirit, balance, and harmony. In 1492, an Italian navigator sailing under the Spanish crown, Christopher Columbus, set out across an unknown ocean. His journey would forever alter the world. Soon, waves of explorers followed: Spanish conquistadors in the south, French trappers in the north, and English settlers along the eastern coast. They brought with them dreams, diseases, and destinies that clashed and intertwined with the native peoples who had lived there for millennia. By the early 1600s, English colonists founded Jamestown, Virginia, the first permanent settlement. Others soon followed, like Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims sought freedom from religious persecution. Across the Atlantic, these small colonies grew, blending cultures, ideals, and ambitions. But under the rule of the British Crown, tension simmered. The colonists endured taxes, restrictions, and control from a distant king. They yearned for liberty, for self-governance, for the right to determine their own future. As the Enlightenment spread across Europe, ideas of democracy, rights, and equality began to take root in the New World. In Boston, tea was thrown into the harbor as a cry for independence. In Philadelphia, brave men gathered to sign a document that would change history forever. The year was 1776, and the words of Thomas Jefferson rang out across the world. Greater than, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Thus began the American Revolution, the birth of a new nation forged in fire, sacrifice, and the belief in freedom. The colonies stood against the mightiest empire on earth. Farmers became soldiers, and merchants became revolutionaries. Under the leadership of George Washington, a ragtag army fought against British forces that seemed unstoppable. Through bitter winters, hunger, and despair, the spirit of liberty refused to die. In Valley Forge, men stood barefoot in the snow, hungry yet unbroken. Across the Atlantic, France, inspired by the American cause, joined the fight. The war raged for 8 long years, a war not just for independence, but for identity. Who were these Americans? What did they stand for? When the smoke cleared at Yorktown in 1781, the impossible had happened: the British surrendered. A new flag flew high over the land of the free. The United States of America was born, but freedom was not yet secure. The new nation faced chaos, division, and uncertainty. In 1787, leaders met again in Philadelphia to write a new constitution, a document that would define a republic unlike any other. It spoke of checks and balances, liberty, and the power of the people. And soon after, the Bill of Rights guaranteed freedoms that would become the soul of the nation: speech, religion, and justice. The revolution had not just created a new country, it had created a new idea. The idea that people could govern themselves, that tyranny could be challenged, and that freedom was worth any cost. The world would never be the same. As the United States expanded westward, a great moral wound deepened: slavery. For generations, millions of African men and women were torn from their homelands and forced into bondage. Their labor built much of the nation's wealth, but their freedom was denied. The contradiction between liberty and slavery tore the country apart. By the mid-1800s, the tension exploded. The North demanded abolition, the South sought independence to preserve its way of life. In 1861, the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun. For 4 bloody years, brother fought brother across battlefields from Gettysburg to Antietam. The war consumed the nation, over 600,000 lives lost. President Abraham Lincoln, a man of humble origins, carried the weight of the Union on his shoulders. In 1863, he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all enslaved people in Confederate states were to be freed. At Gettysburg, Lincoln spoke words that echoed through eternity: greater than, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. In 1865, the Union triumphed. The South lay in ruins, Lincoln was assassinated, and slavery was abolished. The cost was unimaginable, but America had survived, reborn through fire, still striving to fulfill its founding promise of equality and freedom for all. The 20th century dawned with energy, invention, and ambition. Cities rose skyward with steel and glass. Automobiles replaced horses. Electricity, airplanes, and telephones transformed life overnight. Immigrants from around the world poured into the United States seeking a dream, the American dream. But progress came with pain. The early decades were marked by struggle. The Great Depression struck in 1929, plunging millions into poverty. Lines for bread stretched across every city. Yet from the hardship, new leaders emerged. President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave hope with his New Deal, rebuilding the nation's economy and faith. As America recovered, another storm gathered overseas, the rise of fascism in Europe and Asia. When Pearl Harbor was attacked in 1941, the United States entered World War II. Factories turned into arsenals. Men and women alike joined the fight, on the front lines and in the factories. From Normandy's beaches to the Pacific Islands, American courage helped turn the tide. The war ended in 1945, leaving the U.S. as a global superpower. The cost was high, but victory brought a new era, one where America's influence stretched across the world. The post-war years brought prosperity, highways, suburbs, and television reshaped daily life. But beneath the surface, America's greatest struggle continued: equality. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s gave voice to generations silenced by injustice. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamed of a nation where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. As the Cold War divided the world, America became a symbol of democracy and innovation. The space race reached its climax in 1969 when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, saying, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Through decades of change, from Vietnam and Watergate to 9/11 and the digital revolution, America endured. Each challenge tested its ideals, but also its strength. From Silicon Valley's technology to movements for climate action and justice, the nation continued to evolve. Today, the United States stands as a mosaic, diverse, complex, and resilient. Its history is not perfect, but it is powerful. It is a story of freedom won and freedom defended. A story that continues to unfold, written by the people who still believe in the promise of liberty and justice for all.